January 1943, near Leningrad, the frozen hell of the Eastern Front. Soviet tank crews had been hearing rumors for weeks. Whispers about a new German tank, a monster, something that could destroy a T-34 from over a mile away, something their shells just bounced off. Then they captured one, intact, fully functional, a Tiger I heavy tank. They shipped it to the Kubinka proving grounds outside Moscow. Soviet engineers swarmed over it, measured everything, tested everything, fired at it, fired from it, and then they wrote a report that their commanders didn't want to hear. The German Tiger I represents a level of engineering excellence we have not achieved. Our T-34, the pride of Soviet industry, cannot penetrate its frontal armor at any practical combat range. Their 88mm gun can destroy our tanks from distances where we cannot even see them. And then came the question that nobody wanted to ask. Why can't we build this? This is the story of what happened when the Soviets captured their enemy's best weapon, tested it honestly, and admitted it was better than theirs. It's a story about German engineering excellence, Soviet pragmatism, and how one captured tank changed the entire course of armored warfare. Every word is documented in Soviet military archives. This actually happened. Let's dive in. To understand why this captured Tiger mattered so much, we need to understand the Eastern Front in early 1943. The Soviet T-34 medium tank had dominated German panzers since 1941. When Germany invaded the Soviet Union, German Panzer III and IV tanks were outmatched. The T-34 had sloped armor that deflected shells, a powerful 76mm gun, wide tracks that could handle Russian mud and snow, and it was produced in enormous numbers. Soviet tank crews had grown confident, maybe even arrogant. The T-34 was the best tank in the world. Everyone said so. And then the Tigers arrived. Late 1942, early 1943, the first Tiger I tanks began appearing on the Eastern Front, and Soviet tank crews quickly learned terror. Reports started flooding back to Soviet high command. T-34s were being destroyed at ranges of 1,500 to 2,000 meters before they could even get close enough to fire back. Soviet shells were bouncing off Tiger armor like pebbles. One T-34 commander reported, "We hit the German heavy tank 6 times at 800 meters. All 6 shells ricocheted. Then he turned his turret toward us and fired once. My tank exploded. I was the only survivor." This was new. This was terrifying. Soviet doctrine had always been about numbers, quantity over quality. One German tank might be better than one Soviet tank, but the Soviets would field 5 for every German one, and 5 would always beat 1. But the Tigers changed that math. Reports indicated that one Tiger could hold off 10 or more T-34s. The Germans were using them as mobile fortresses, positioned defensively, destroying Soviet armor from distances Soviet tankers had never trained for. The Soviet advantage in numbers was being nullified by German technological superiority. Stalin was furious. He demanded answers. His generals demanded answers. Soviet tank designers demanded answers. And there was only one way to get those answers. They needed to capture a Tiger. Intact. Study it. Understand it. Easier said than done. Tigers were rare, heavily protected, and German crews had orders to destroy their tanks rather than let them be captured. But in January 1943, near Leningrad, the Soviets got lucky. The exact circumstances of the capture are still debated by historians. Soviet records are incomplete. What we know, Near the Sinyavino Heights, close to Leningrad, a Tiger I from Schwere Panzerabteilung 502, that's Heavy Tank Battalion 502, got stuck. Not destroyed, not damaged by enemy fire, just stuck in the mud. The Eastern Front in winter was a nightmare for vehicles. Freezing temperatures, deep mud that would freeze and thaw. The Tiger weighed 56 tons. When it got bogged down, it got really bogged down. The German crew tried to free it, failed. They called for recovery vehicles, but Soviet forces were closing in. Normally, the crew would destroy the tank, set charges, blow up the ammunition, make sure the enemy couldn't use it or study it. But something went wrong. Maybe the crew panicked. Maybe they thought recovery vehicles would arrive in time. Maybe the Soviet attack came too fast. Whatever the reason, they abandoned the Tiger, and the Soviets captured it intact. When Soviet engineers first saw it up close, they were stunned. This thing was massive, nearly twice the weight of a T-34, armor that looked impossibly thick, a gun that dwarfed anything the Soviets had. One engineer's notes, later declassified, said, "Standing next to this machine, you feel small. This is not a tank. This is a fortress on tracks." They freed the Tiger from the mud, got it running, and immediately began the process of shipping it to Kubinka. Kubinka Proving Grounds was the Soviet Union's primary tank testing facility, located about 60 kilometers west of Moscow. This is where every Soviet tank was tested, and now they'd test a German one. The Tiger arrived at Kubinka in late January 1943, and the most comprehensive enemy tank evaluation in Soviet history began. Soviet engineers approached the Tiger methodically. This was their chance to understand German tank design philosophy, and they didn't waste it. First, measurements. Everything was measured and documented. The Tiger I weighed 56 tons. The T-34 weighed 26 tons, more than twice as heavy. Frontal armor on the Tiger, 102 millimeters thick, flat, not sloped like Soviet tanks. The T-34 had 45 millimeters of sloped armor on the front. The Soviet engineers did the math. 102 millimeters of flat armor was roughly equivalent to 180 millimeters of sloped armor in terms of effective protection. The T-34 couldn't touch it. The gun, the famous 88mm KWK-36 L56. This wasn't just any gun. This was adapted from the German 88mm anti-aircraft gun, one of the most feared weapons of World War II. Muzzle velocity, 773 meters per second. Could penetrate 120 millimeters of armor at 1,000 meters. The T-34's frontal armor was only 45 millimeters. Soviet reports noted, the 88mm gun can destroy any Soviet tank in service at any practical combat range. Our tanks must close to within 500 meters to have any chance of penetrating the Tiger's armor. But the Tiger can destroy us from 1,500 to 2,000 meters. The optics. Soviet engineers were particularly impressed by the German optics. The Tiger had a Termziel-Fernrohr 9B telescopic sight, magnification and clarity, far superior to Soviet tank sights. German tank commanders could identify targets at ranges Soviet tankers couldn't even see them. One Soviet optics specialist wrote, "Their optical technology is a generation ahead of ours." This explains why German tanks consistently achieve first-shot kills. The transmission and engine. This is where the Tiger started showing weaknesses. The Tiger was powered by a Maybach HL230 P45 V12 engine, 690 horsepower. Impressive. But it was pushing 56 tons. The power-to-weight ratio was about 12.3 horsepower per ton. The T-34 had a 500 horsepower diesel engine moving 26 tons. Power-to-weight ratio of about 19.2 horsepower per ton. The T-34 was more mobile. The transmission was complicated, very complicated. A sophisticated pre-selector gearbox, effective when working, but prone to breakdowns. Soviet engineers noted, the German transmission represents excellent engineering, but it requires a level of manufacturing precision we cannot currently achieve, and it is not suited to field repairs. The fuel consumption was shocking. The Tiger consumed about 270 liters per 100 kilometers on roads. Off-road, it could be double that. The T-34 used about 185 liters per 100 kilometers. Germany didn't have unlimited fuel. The Soviets realized that this Tiger, for all its power, was thirsty. Logistically D. Now came the real test. Firing. The Soviets wanted to answer two critical questions. Can we destroy this tank? And what can this tank destroy? They set up two series of tests. First, they'd fire the Tiger's 88mm gun at various Soviet tanks and armor plates. See what it could penetrate. Then, they'd fire Soviet guns at the Tiger. See if they could kill it. Test 1. The Tiger fires at a T-34. They positioned a captured, damaged T-34 at 1,000 meters. Standard combat range. The Tiger fired. The armor-piercing round went completely through the T-34. Front armor. Through the fighting compartment. Out the back armor. Like a knife through butter. Soviet observers were silent. They'd suspected this, but seeing it was different. They moved the T-34 to 1,500 meters. Fired again. Penetration. Clean kill. 2,000 meters. The absolute limit of visual range. Fired. Penetration. The Soviet report stated, the Tiger can destroy our medium tanks at any range it can see them. This is unacceptable. They tested against heavier armor. The KV-1 heavy tank. Thicker armor than the T-34. Surely it could withstand the 88mm. At 1,000 meters, the 88mm punched through the KV-1's frontal armor. At 1,500 meters, it still penetrated. The Soviets were running out of targets that could withstand the Tiger's gun. Test 2. Soviet guns fire at the Tiger. This was the test everyone was dreading. Because if Soviet guns couldn't penetrate the Tiger, what were they supposed to do on the battlefield? They started with the T-34's 76mm gun, standard Soviet medium tank armament. Range, 500 meters. Fired. The shell bounced off the Tiger's frontal armor, barely left a dent. They moved closer. 300 meters. Fired. Ricochet. 100 meters. Point-blank range. Suicidal in actual combat. Fired. The shell penetrated the side armor, not the front. The side, which was thinner. The front armor of the Tiger was effectively immune to the T-34's main gun at combat ranges. Soviet report. Our most numerous tank cannot fight the Tiger from the front. Tactical doctrine must change. T-34s must flank the Tiger or attack in overwhelming numbers to achieve kills through side and rear shots. They tried heavier guns. The 85mm anti-aircraft gun. At 1,000 meters, it could penetrate the Tiger's frontal armor. Finally, something that worked. But the 85mm wasn't standard tank armament yet. It was an anti-aircraft gun. Putting it in a tank would require entirely new designs. They also tested Soviet anti-tank rifles, the PTRD and PTRS. These were supposed to be able to damage tanks. Against the Tiger, useless. Completely useless. The bullets bounced off without even scratching the paint. One frustrated tester wrote in the margins of his report, "This machine makes a mockery of everything we thought we knew about armored warfare." All right, quick pause. If you're a tank enthusiast or just fascinated by military engineering, hit that like button. This story gets even more interesting. Drop a comment. If you were a Soviet engineer in 1943 and saw these test results, what would you do? Try to copy the Tiger or design something completely different? Because that's exactly the debate that happened next, and the answer changed tank warfare forever. Let's get back to it. All right, quick pause. If you're a tank enthusiast or just fascinated by military engineering, hit that like button. This story gets even more interesting. Drop a comment. If you were a Soviet engineer in 1943 and saw these test results, what would you do? Try to copy the Tiger or design something completely different? Because that's exactly the debate that happened next. And the answer changed tank warfare forever. Let's get back to it. After weeks of testing, Soviet engineers compiled their report. This document, now declassified, is fascinating because it's brutally honest. The report was titled Assessment of German Heavy Tank PZKFW-6 Tiger, Tactical and Technical Characteristics. It was distributed to Stalin, to the Politburo, to the heads of Soviet tank design bureaus, and to frontline commanders. This wasn't buried. This was taken seriously. Let me read you some excerpts. These are translated from the original Russian. Point. Armor protection. The Tiger's armor scheme provides superior protection compared to all Soviet tanks currently in service. The use of thick, flat armor plates, while theoretically less efficient than sloped armor, proves highly effective due to sheer thickness. Our 76mm tank guns cannot penetrate frontal armor at any tactical range. Armament. The 88mm KWK-36 gun is superior to any tank gun in Soviet service. Its penetration capability, accuracy, and range give the Tiger a decisive advantage in tank versus tank combat. Optics. German optical equipment is of exceptional quality. Clarity and magnification exceed Soviet equivalents. This, combined with superior gun range, means Tiger crews can engage our tanks before we can effectively return fire. Mobility. The Tiger's mobility is adequate but not exceptional. Its weight creates ground pressure issues in soft terrain. Our T-34 is more mobile and more reliable in cross-country movement. Mechanical reliability. This is the Tiger's primary weakness. The transmission is over-engineered and prone to failure. Fuel consumption is excessive. Field maintenance requires specialized tools and expertise that German field units often lack. And then came the conclusion, the part that must have been difficult to write. The German Tiger I represents a level of armored vehicle development that surpasses current Soviet heavy tank programs. While the Tiger has significant operational weaknesses, its combat effectiveness against Soviet armor is undeniable. Immediate action is required to develop countermeasures. One engineer, whose name is redacted in the declassified documents, wrote a personal note attached to his section of the report, propped frustrated but honest. German engineering is frustratingly excellent. They have solved problems we are still struggling with. Their manufacturing quality, their metallurgy, their attention to detail, it is superior. We must acknowledge this and learn from it. That note, German engineering is frustratingly excellent. That's the quote that summarizes the entire Soviet response to the Tiger. They weren't in denial. They didn't dismiss it as propaganda or lucky German design. They admitted it. The enemy had built something better, and now they had to figure out what to do about it. Soviet tank designers had a problem, and they had two possible solutions. Option 1, copy the Tiger. Build their own 56-ton heavy tank with thick armor and a big gun. Option 2. Design something that could fight the Tiger without being the Tiger. The Soviets chose both. Sort of. They couldn't just copy the Tiger. For several reasons. First, manufacturing capability. The Tiger required precision engineering that Soviet factories, optimized for mass production, couldn't easily achieve. The tolerances, the quality control, the specialized components. It would take years to retool. Second, resources. Each Tiger required enormous amounts of steel, fuel, and man-hours. Germany could barely produce them. The Soviets needed tanks by the thousands, not hundreds. Third, doctrine. Soviet tank doctrine emphasized mobility, numbers, and combined arms tactics. A 56-ton behemoth that consumed fuel like a bonfire didn't fit that doctrine. But they did need something that could fight the Tiger, something that could penetrate its armor, something their tank crews could trust. The answer? The IS-2 heavy tank. IS stood for Iosif Stalin. Yes, they named it after Stalin. That's how important this was. The IS-2 was designed specifically with the lessons from the captured Tiger in mind. It mounted a massive 122mm gun, larger than the Tiger's 88mm. This gun could penetrate the Tiger's frontal armor at reasonable combat ranges. Finally, Soviet tankers would have a weapon that could hurt the Tiger from the front. The armor protection was heavy, but not quite as heavy as the Tiger. The IS-2 weighed about 46 tons. Still a heavy tank, but 10 tons lighter than the Tiger. This made it more mobile and less fuel-hungry. The armor was sloped. Unlike the Tiger's flat armor, the IS-2 used sloped armor plates for better protection per weight. Soviet designers stuck with what they knew worked. Importantly, the IS-2 was designed to be manufacturable in Soviet factories, less complex than the Tiger, fewer tight tolerances, parts that could be produced quickly and replaced easily. Period. The first IS-2s entered service in early 1944, about a year after the Tiger was captured and tested. Soviet tankers loved it. Finally, they had something that could stand up to German heavy tanks. The 122mm gun was feared by German tank crews. It could destroy a Tiger with a single hit. But the IS-2 wasn't the only response. The Soviets also upgraded the T-34. The T-34-85 appeared in 1944, mounting an 85mm gun instead of the 76mm. This gun could penetrate a Tiger's frontal armor at closer ranges. Not as effective as the IS-2's 122mm, but much better than the original 76mm. And tactically, Soviet commanders changed their approach. They stopped trying to fight Tigers head-on with T-34s. Instead, they'd use T-30. Here's what's fascinating. The Soviets didn't just learn what made the Tiger good. They learned what made it vulnerable. The Soviet report identified several critical weaknesses that Soviet forces could exploit. Weakness number 1, mechanical reliability. The Tiger's transmission was its Achilles heel. It broke down. A lot. Soviet commanders were instructed to avoid direct confrontation when possible, and instead pursue aggressively. Force the Tiger to maneuver. Make it use its fragile transmission. Soviet reports documented that many Tigers were abandoned by their crews due to mechanical failure, not combat damage. In the mud, snow, and brutal conditions of the Eastern Front, complexity was a liability. Weakness number 2, fuel consumption. The Tiger drank fuel. Soviet intelligence tracked German fuel supplies. They knew that Tigers often couldn't advance or retreat due to empty tanks. Cut the supply lines, and the Tigers became stationary pillboxes. One Soviet tank commander wrote, "The German heavy tank is powerful, but it eats fuel faster than Germany can supply. This is a strategic weakness we must exploit. Weakness number 3. Limited numbers. Germany produced about 1,350 Tiger I tanks during the entire war. The Soviets produced over 35,000 T-34s, over 57,000 tanks total. Even if one Tiger could destroy 10 T-34s, the Soviets could afford to lose those 10 T-34s. Germany couldn't afford to lose that one Tiger. The math of attrition favored the Soviets, always. Weakness number 4. Side and rear armor. The Tiger's frontal armor was nearly impenetrable, but its side armor was only 80 millimeters. Its rear armor was even thinner. And unlike the front, these weren't at optimal angles. Soviet doctrine became, never engage a Tiger from the front if you can avoid it. Flank it. Use speed and numbers to get around it. Hit it from the sides or rear. T-34s were faster and more agile. They could outmaneuver a Tiger. In urban combat or forests, where Tigers couldn't utilize their range advantage, Soviet tanks could close the distance and attack from multiple angles. Weakness number 5. Vision and situational awareness. This one surprised me. Despite having excellent optics, the Tiger had limited vision ports. The commander's cupola had decent all-around vision, but the rest of the crew was relatively blind. Soviet infantry learned to attack Tigers with close-range weapons. Molotov cocktails, satchel charges, anti-tank grenades. Get close and the Tiger crew couldn't see you. Soviet reports emphasized combined arms tactics. Never send tanks alone against Tigers. Use infantry, artillery, and air support together. It's worth noting, German tank crews respected Soviet armor too. When Germany first encountered the T-34 in 1941, they had a similar reaction to what the Soviets had with the Tiger. Shock, disbelief, the realization that the enemy had built something they hadn't prepared for. German after-action reports from 1941 admitted, the T-34 is superior to our current Panzer III and IV models. Its sloped armor and 76mm gun make it a formidable opponent. The Tiger was Germany's response to the T-34, a bigger, heavier, more powerful tank designed to destroy Soviet armor from long range. And it worked. The Tiger's kill-to-loss ratio on the Eastern Front was extraordinary. Estimates vary, but some sources suggest an average of 5-to-1 or higher. One Tiger could, on average, destroy 5 enemy tanks before being knocked out. That's impressive. That's a testament to German engineering, crew training, and tactical deployment. But 5-to-1 isn't enough when the enemy has 10-to-1 numerical superiority. German tankers knew this. They loved the Tiger. They felt safer in a Tiger than in any other tank. But they also knew they were outnumbered. One German Tiger commander wrote in his memoir, "The Tiger was a magnificent machine, but we needed 10 times as many. We had quality. The Russians had quantity. In the end, quantity won." That's the tragic irony. Germany built one of the best tanks of World War II, but they couldn't build enough of them, and they couldn't keep them supplied with fuel and parts. The Tiger was a masterpiece of engineering, but it was also a symbol of Germany's strategic problem, trying to win through superior technology when the enemy could simply outproduce them. Quick question for you. Would you rather have one incredible tank or 10 good tanks? That's the fundamental question of military procurement. Quality versus quantity. Drop your answer in the comments. I'm curious what you think, because this debate still happens today. Every time a military designs a new weapon system, they face this choice. All right, let's talk about the long-term impact, because that captured Tiger's influence lasted decades. The captured Tiger at Kubinka didn't just influence the IS-2. It influenced Soviet tank design philosophy for the next 40 years. Lesson number 1. Armor protection matters. Soviet designers had favored sloped armor and mobility. The Tiger showed them that sometimes sheer thickness matters too. Post-war Soviet heavy tanks like the IS-3, IS-4, and T-10 all featured extremely heavy armor protection. The Cold War Soviet doctrine for heavy tanks was directly influenced by studying the Tiger. Build tanks that can absorb punishment and keep fighting. Lesson number 2. Gun size matters. The Tiger's 88mm gun taught the Soviets that bigger guns change the battlefield. The IS-2's 122mm gun was a direct response. Post-war, Soviet tanks continued this trend. The T-54 and T-55, which became the most produced tanks in history, mounted 100mm guns, larger than necessary for fighting 1950s-era tanks. But the Soviets remembered the Tiger. Better to have more gun than you need than not enough. Later Soviet tanks like the T-62, T-64, and T-72 mounted even larger guns. 115mm smoothbore, then 125mm smoothbore. The philosophy: bigger is better when it comes to tank guns. Lesson number 3. Combined arms are essential. The Tiger taught the Soviets that no single weapon system dominates the battlefield. Yes, the Tiger was powerful, but it had weaknesses, and those weaknesses could be exploited with combined arms tactics. Post-war Soviet doctrine emphasized combined arms operations. Tanks supported by infantry, artillery, air support, and engineers. Never rely on one weapon system alone. This doctrine defined Soviet and later Russian military thinking through the Cold War and beyond. Lesson number 3. Combined arms are essential. The Tiger taught the Soviets that no single weapon system dominates the battlefield. Yes, the Tiger was powerful, but it had weaknesses, and those weaknesses could be exploited with combined arms tactics. Post-war Soviet doctrine emphasized combined arms operations. Tanks supported by infantry, artillery, air support, and engineers. Never rely on one weapon system alone. This doctrine defined Soviet and later Russian military thinking through the Cold War and beyond. Lesson number 4. Reliability beats complexity. The Tiger's mechanical unreliability was noted again and again in Soviet reports, and it influenced Soviet design philosophy forever. Soviet tanks are famously simple, rugged, easy to maintain, built for mass production. The T-34 philosophy continued through the T-54, T-62, T-72, all the way to modern Russian tanks. They remembered the Tiger's lesson. A tank that doesn't run is just an expensive bunker. Better to have a simple tank that works than a complex tank that breaks down. The Kubinka Tiger today. That captured Tiger still exists. It's on display at the Kubinka Tank Museum outside Moscow. Tank number 250031. You can visit it today. It sits there, preserved, a testament to German engineering and Soviet determination to understand their enemy. Thousands of visitors see it every year. Russian schoolchildren learn about it. Military historians study it. And on the display placard in Russian, it says, "This tank taught us to build better." That's respect. Decades after the war, after all the hatred and blood, the Soviets still acknowledged this was an excellent machine. This story isn't just about tanks. It's about how nations respond to being technologically outmatched. The Soviets had 3 options when they captured that Tiger. Option 1. Deny the problem. Claim the Tiger wasn't really that good. Dismiss it as propaganda or luck. Keep building the same tanks they'd always built. They didn't do that. They couldn't afford to. Option 2. Panic. Abandon their entire tank program. Try to slavishly copy the Tiger. Rebuild their entire industrial base to match German capabilities. They didn't do that either. It would have been impossible and wasteful. Option 3. Learn. Study the Tiger honestly. Identify what made it good. Identify what made it vulnerable. Apply those lessons to their own designs within the constraints of their industrial capabilities. This is what they did, and it worked. This is pragmatic military thinking at its best. No ego, no denial, just honest assessment and intelligent adaptation. The Soviet military had many, many flaws. But their willingness to honestly assess enemy capabilities was not one of them. They didn't let pride get in the way of reality. That German engineer's note, "German engineering is frustratingly excellent," represents intellectual honesty that's rare in wartime. Most nations, most militaries, have trouble admitting the enemy does something better. But admitting it is the first step to fixing it. The Soviets studied the Tiger, learned from it, built tanks that could fight it, and eventually overwhelmed. By 1944-45, when IS-2s and upgraded T-34-85s flooded the battlefield, the Tiger's advantage had diminished. Not because the Tiger got worse, but because Soviet tanks got better. That's the real lesson. Your enemy's excellence can make you better, if you're willing to learn. There's a lot of mythology around the Tiger tank. Let's separate fact from fiction. Myth number 1. The Tiger was invincible. Reality, no. The Tiger was extremely well protected from the front, but it could be destroyed. Side shots, rear shots, aerial attacks, artillery, mines, mechanical failure, all killed Tigers. Of the roughly 1,350 Tigers built, almost all were eventually destroyed or captured. Many were simply abandoned when they broke down or ran out of fuel. The Tiger was formidable, not invincible. Myth number 2. One Tiger could destroy dozens of enemy tanks. Reality, some could, some did. There are documented cases of single Tigers destroying 10, 15, even 20 enemy tanks in a single engagement. But these were exceptional cases, usually involving ambush positions, poor enemy tactics, or extremely skilled crews. The average Tiger didn't rack up dozens of kills before being knocked out. The kill ratio was good, around 5-to-1 on average. But good isn't the same as invincible. Myth number 3. The Tiger won battles single-handedly. Reality, the Tiger was part of combined arms operations. It worked with infantry, artillery, other tanks, and air support. Isolated Tigers were vulnerable. Supported Tigers were deadly. No weapon system wins battles alone, not even the Tiger. Myth number 3. The Tiger won battles single-handedly. Reality, the Tiger was part of combined arms operations. It worked with infantry, artillery, other tanks, and air support. Isolated Tigers were vulnerable. Supported Tigers were deadly. No weapon system wins battles alone, not even the Tiger. Myth number 4. Soviet tanks were junk compared to the Tiger. Reality, Soviet tanks had different design philosophies. The T-34 was faster, more reliable, easier to produce, and available in overwhelming numbers. The IS-2 could penetrate the Tiger's armor and was nearly as well protected. The Tiger was better at what it was designed to do, long-range armored combat. But better at one thing doesn't mean better overall. Soviet tanks were designed for the realities of the Eastern Front: vast distances, poor roads, harsh weather, and the need for massive production. They succeeded in those criteria. Reality: the Tiger was an excellent tank with significant limitations. It had the best armor protection of any tank in 1943. It had one of the best tank guns of the war. It had excellent optics and fire control, but it was mechanically complex, fuel-hungry, difficult to produce, and couldn't be manufactured in the numbers Germany needed. The Soviets recognized all of this. They learned from the strengths, they exploited the weaknesses, and they built tanks that could compete within the constraints of Soviet industry. The Tiger represented two conflicting philosophies of war. German philosophy: quality over quantity. Germany believed that superior technology and training could overcome numerical disadvantages. Build the best tanks, train the best crews, use superior tactics, win through excellence. This worked early in the war. German panzers, though outnumbered, defeated French and Soviet tanks through superior tactics and crew quality. The Tiger was the ultimate expression of this philosophy. The best armor, the best gun, built to the highest standards. But there was a problem. Germany didn't have unlimited resources. Building one Tiger took the same resources as building several Panzer IVs. Every Tiger that broke down was a massive loss. Every Tiger crew that was killed was difficult to replace. Quality is powerful, but only if you can sustain it. Soviet philosophy: adequate quality, overwhelming quantity. The Soviets believed that good enough in large numbers beats excellence in small numbers. Build tanks that work. Build lots of them. Train adequate crews. Win through mass. The T-34 embodied this. Good armor, good gun, good mobility, reliable, and produced by the tens of thousands. The Soviets could afford to lose tanks. They had more. Always more. Factories in the Urals churned out T-34s faster than Germans could destroy them. When the Soviets encountered the Tiger, they didn't abandon their philosophy. They adapted it. They improved their tanks' quality while maintaining quantity. The IS-2 and T-34-85 were better tanks than the original T-34, but still simpler and more producible than the Tiger. The result? By late 1944, the Soviets had both quality and quantity. Tigers faced IS-2s that could hurt them, and T-34-85s that outnumbered them. The Tiger was excellent. But excellence isn't enough. You need excellence at scale. And Germany couldn't achieve that. The Soviets studied the Tiger and learned this lesson. Build the best tank you can mass produce, not the best tank theoretically possible. So that's the story of the captured Tiger. January 1943. Soviet forces capture a Tiger I near Leningrad. Ship it to Kubinka. Test everything. Fire at it. Fire from it. Measure it. Study it. And then write a report that admits German engineering is frustratingly excellent. That honesty, that willingness to say the enemy built something better, that's powerful. That's the kind of intellectual integrity that wins wars, because they didn't stop at admitting it. They acted on it. They built the IS-2, upgraded the T-34, changed their tactics, adapted their doctrine, and by 1945, Soviet tanks were rolling into Berlin. The Tiger taught them, and they were willing to learn. Today, that Tiger still sits at Kubinka, preserved, a monument to German engineering excellence and Soviet determination to understand and overcome that excellence. Military historians from around the world visit it, study it, photograph it. It's become more than just a tank. It's a symbol of how nations adapt in war. Now, I want to hear from you. Final question. What impressed you most about this story? The Tiger's capabilities, Soviet honesty in their assessment, how they adapted and overcame? Drop a comment below. And if you learned something new today, hit that like button. Share this with anyone interested in military history or engineering. If you want more stories about World War II weapons, testing, and the engineering behind the battles, subscribe to this channel. I've got more deep dives coming on everything from fighter planes to rifles to the logistics that won the war. Because history isn't just about who won and who lost. It's about how they did it, what they learned, how technology and tactics evolved. Before I go, let me leave you with one more quote from those Soviet test reports. This one stuck with me. Pause, quote voice, slow and thoughtful. The German Tiger represents what is possible when a nation commits its best engineering minds to building a weapon of war. It is excellent because excellent people built it. Our response must be equally excellent, not by copying them, but by understanding what we can do well and doing it better. They understood, you don't beat excellence by copying it. You beat it by finding your own path to excellence. The Germans built the best individual tank. The Soviets built the best tank program. And in the end, the program mattered more than the individual machine. Thank you for watching. Thank you for being part of this channel. And remember, even your enemy has something to teach you, if you're willing to listen. Until next time, stay curious, stay informed, and never stop learning from history. Beat, final line with slight pride. The Tiger was an engineering masterpiece, but it met its match in Soviet pragmatism.